Oh, okay. So here we go. All right, everybody. We are back here on the members only Q&A stream. I know that we had we'll see how many people come here, but I know that we had some questions over there, and I'm hoping he's going to copy them over. And if not, I want to talk about those because I've got also questions over here. But I mean, first of all, this was just fantastic. This is incredible.
Awesome.
I'll start with a question for the moment here because I've read analysis of the hero's journey. Like I'm talking about, like especially over here. I guess you know this one right here, the writer's journey.
Oh, Christopher Vogler.
Yeah,
I got that one.
Okay, and he uses examples of some same stories you have, but as
hero's journeys.
As hero's journeys. Yes. Okay. So James is here and says, "Pardon the." I can't pull up. I'm using different software, so because this is a private stream, I can't pull it up. But James is working on questions in 200 characters. So how do I? So we'll start with that while they're typing. So how do we, or should we be reanalyzing those stories that have been traditionally said? Well, like I expect even Wizard of the Oz. I mean, he talks about Wizard of the Oz being hero's journey all the time.
Well, they seemed like the hero's journey. They simulated the hero's journey, but I think archetypally they are different. They're not exactly the same thing. That's why I call it a fantastical maze at home. In the book, that's what I call it. Fantastical mazes at home, where they appear to be these elaborate outward journeys, but they're not. They're explorations or daydreams within the native culture, and that's why the imagery and objects around the heroine are still her native culture, maybe in a bizarre way. But some stories also, I think, are mixtures. A lot of them have some archetypes from the hero's journey and some from the heroine's labyrinth. In fact, The Matrix, when I watched The Matrix, I'm like, this is half hero's journey, like clearly, and then it's half heroine's labyrinth, like it follows certain themes from the heroine's labyrinth. So yeah, I think for me, I reanalyze. So should we relook at? Yes, because it's helpful. That's why we should do it. I think it's because it's helpful. I've relooked at things and I've gotten new ideas and thoughts because I relooked at them. So I think it's very useful to relook at things and see what else you might shake loose out of the tree.
Okay, we got some questions coming in, but let me just follow up on that then. That it seems like to me then you are very big on in the hero's journey when you go to the other world.
Yes.
It seems like then you appear to be very big on the other world being a very physical relocation and journey. Whereas I think previously I would have been willing to accept the other world as something much more metaphorical, like or potentially a metaphorical other world.
Right.
But you're saying that the physicality of this is an important distinction between the heroine and the hero.
I do, because I think it means something to go to the other world for the warrior-oriented hero's journey. You're not going to go to the other world unless you're attempting to confront something very, very dangerous. Whereas the heroine isn't necessarily facing that. There's not a militancy to it. So the other world, if it stays in the native culture and is bizarre or outlandish, I think it can be metaphorical, like Alice in Wonderland. That's in her backyard, but the aspects of it are outlandish and bizarre, maybe psychotropic. But yeah, it is more metaphorical. So I think depending on what you're aiming to achieve, what your hero or what your main character, what they're attempting to confront determines, in my opinion, whether it's a genuine hero's journey outward to the underworld or whether it's a exploration into the bizarre, exotic aspects of the native culture. That's my take. What is your hero? What are they trying to set out to do? I think that's essentially the question is the challenge to the hero, to the lead character, the native culture, or is the challenge something other, something beyond the native culture? I think that's kind of
the distinction factor. Okay, James asks, I can't bring this up, but I'll read it to you.
Sure.
And if you need it to say it again, I'll be happy to say it again. So James
Okay.
says, question 1, if home is a prison or confining, isn't home just the culture of the protagonist and experiencing the culture of their society, the other world? Isn't home the culture of the protagonist and experiencing the culture of their society, the other world? Is it not a more local, so is it not a more local version of the elements of the hero's journey?
Yeah, I think that's a similar question to what you just
Yeah,
asked.
I think it is. I think it is.
So it can be. Again, I think the ultimate question is the protagonist, is there conflict with the native culture itself, or is there conflict something that's beyond the native culture? If it's something that's really outside the native culture and that's threatening the native culture, then that other world will probably be alien, foreign, machine-like, exotic, otherworldly. If it's really the native culture that is the main problem for that protagonist, then you might have metaphorical a metaphorical otherworld that's really just an illusion of the native culture itself, like Wizard of Oz. That's a perfect example. She never really left home, and all the characters are the people in her home society. She never left her native culture, so she's working something out in terms of her conflict with the native culture through this illusion. Remember, Dorothy wanted to go somewhere over the rainbow. She wanted to go somewhere else. She wanted out. And this illusion is her daydream of getting out. And her conclusion of this daydream is there's no place like home. Better to stay home. So believe it or not, Wizard of Oz honors the native culture's claim to the hero in Sacred Fire. You think you want adventure, but really there's no place like home. Is the message in that. So it honors the native culture. So that's my view, is depending on the protagonist and what they're setting out to resolve determines whether you're really going into the underworld physically, into a faraway place, or if it's an allegorical otherworld that is helping you work out, or your character work out, a conflict within the native culture.
Okay. How about this? If home is a prison, then why the invasion of home? At the start of the story, the heroine wants to leave, but toward the end is invaded. Why would she care?
Well,
Does
it's
she
still her
maybe need to
home.
establish a new home at a beat earlier in the story?
Right. Well, for the heroine, home is two things. It's a place. It's her safe place. It's where she grew up. It's where her parents, or people she trusts, live. It's where she passes time. So even if home is oppressive, there's still going to be elements of home that are found only at home. You will never find these anywhere else. So there's still a sense of sanctuary there on some level. Even Rapunzel in Tangled, she hates it. She's held prisoner. It is a prison, and yet she's painting. She's watching the Lantern Festival. She's talking to her friend the chameleon. God, what was his name? Pascal? Anyway, I can't remember. Anyway, but she's doing a lot at home. So the heroine has found a way to make home her home, but she still desires to leave it. So the issue is, when that little bit of safe space is invaded, it's still it's an archetypal terror. Like I said, I remember being a kid watching the Terminator attack the police station, and I was just like, holy beep. I was like, oh my God, like even there you're not safe. So there's something primal. There's a primal terror to having that place invaded by someone you oppose. So even though the home is a prison, it's much worse facing a tyrannical invasion of that space from someone who means you harm. So in that contrast, that's still worse, home as battleground, than home as captivity. Captivity is preferable to complete annihilation in some sense.
Well, it also makes me wonder if during the intervening part of the story, when I got to get out of here, I'm leaving,
sure.
Whatever, that part of that is to realize there's some value in what was there. And that, so when it's threatened,
well, it's still your place, and I call them archetypal entendres. I always look for something primal in the real world that connects to us on a primal level when we're watching a humanized version of it. And I think we've all had this even in dreams. Do you ever have a dream where someone's coming up close and you're terrified and you're staying still? you're breathing heavy, your eyes are closed, and you hope that whatever's there doesn't see you as it passes. It's terrifying. This is a primal fear. So here's that primal fear come to life in front of our heroine. She's going to be terrified. It's scary when someone enters your home. Even if you thought home is a terrible place, it's not worse than this minotaur coming up close in an effort to either capture or destroy you or convert you in some way. So I still think that the primal terror of home as battleground supersedes the more maturity seeking or adventure seeking side to the adventure seeking side to the immature heroine. I think that's purely archetypal as well, but I think this has a terror level that is up at the top of that scale. If that makes sense, does that answer it?
Yeah, I think so. We got two more questions here, and actually the fourth one, or the second one here, is actually one very similar to the question that I had here. So, okay, but the next question is, if the poison apple must appear desirable, why does any consumable meet the criteria? You had mentioned a dart gun or a forced injection also as examples.
Well, I think it depends on what kind of disguise that the masked minotaur is using. You know, like Kill Bill, when he shoots her with the dart gun, he's still hiding it. So although the gun's not a desirable, he's still using deception to get her up close before bypassing her ability to fight him. So he knocks her out. The goal of the poison apple is to knock out, disorient, or confuse the heroine so that the minotaur gets a chance to recapture her. That's really he's not killing her yet, not with the poisoned apple. The poisoned apple is like, all right, negotiations are over. Now I'm going to cheat. I'm going to drag you in, and you're going to listen to me while I forcibly convince you to join my cause. That's why you see the heroine enter an altered state. Usually she's disoriented. Even in Aliens, by the way, the face huggers are a perfect poison apple. It's internal. It knocks her unconscious, and it changes the heroine for sure. And who delivers the face huggers in Aliens? The masked minotaur, Carter Burke. So poisoned apples have many forms. It doesn't always have to be appealing. The appealing poisoned apple is simply one form of deception that can take. The concealed gun, that's another form of deception. Sneaking into her chamber to release a face hugger, that's deceptive. It's delivered deceptively and intentionally by usually the masked minotaur.
I gotcha. That's very interesting. Okay, so then I'll say how James has this question here, and then is related to how I would phrase this question.
Sure.
The question is, with many of your examples, you selected characters from horror and psychological thrillers. Critically here, several non-protagonists. If the Labyrinth is a structure unto itself, I think maybe better examples of these beats would be taken from protagonist heroines.
Okay,
which I understand what he's saying here, which would
like
bring up in my terminology would be the difference between, I had couched this as story structures. Like here is the story, and some people would say a story arc. But should we be talking about character arc?
Yes. In fact, I think these are the themes that the character follows. In fact, I place great emphasis on focusing on the heroine. I think since we're talking about themes, I did kind of focus on the theme maybe I got away a little bit from the heroine, but this whole thing is about the heroine's maturation process. It's different from the hero's journey, but it's all about her going from an immature state to a mature state, from confinement to freedom. And along the way, she ends up rearranging or changing the native culture itself, challenging the native culture, or at least if there's a minotaur, breaking that spell, ending that minotaur's tyrannical influence on the native culture. But it is about the heroine. That's why it's the heroine's labyrinth. You're totally right. In fact, as a writer, I place the character first and the world second. Not that that means the world doesn't count, but the character always comes first. And this process shows how the heroine will go from one place to another, archetypally speaking. Mm-hmm. And that's why there's things like atonement that pertains directly to the heroine. her need for validation or reconciliation with her culture, her native culture, or herself. That's part of her maturation process. But you'll see in the first part, she's very confined. There's not a lot. People are tricking her. She's redirected. By the end, she's had enough. All bets are off, and she makes a stand and risks it all in order to defend what she believes is right about the world. And she either makes it or she doesn't. There's plenty of stories where the heroines don't make it. Thelma and Louise, they drive off the cliff. Anna Karenina, which is literature, she throws herself under a train. Romeo and Juliet, Cleopatra, those are Shakespeare. Like, heroines kill themselves, or they don't always make it out. So it's definitely about the heroine and the arc that they're on. These just are the archetypal events that occur on that arc, like the hero's journey. That's how I see the hero's journey. These are the events that occur, and the end result is a hero's arc at the end, and it's all based on that character.
Mm-hmm. So, okay, we'll take one more question from over here, but to expand on that before we go. So, sure. But I was thinking that, okay, if you've got a rather simple story, you might choose one. Like, okay, I got to do the hero's journey, or I'm going to do the heroine's labyrinth, or I'm going to do whatever. But if you've got a more complicated story where you've got multiple characters that can go through several different arcs,
sure,
then perhaps you do have the opportunity to have, like, when okay, this is the main character, so that's the main arc that we're going through, but we got these multiple side characters are also going through an arc. So maybe they do pick up, maybe they should pick up elements of other archetypical elements of their story. Like you were talking about Princess Leia. You're talking about the injection. I was immediately thinking about Darth Vader and the probe.
Yeah, that's it.
That even though this story is the hero's journey, this is Luke Skywalker's story, we have one of our side characters, which is Princess Leia. So maybe it makes sense then that her side story involves archetypical elements of the heroine, and the same way with Eowyn in the Lord of the Rings.
Totally. In fact, as a writer, you don't want to think too much about it while you're writing. You really want to focus on the scene and the chapter and all that, and you're trying to get the dialogue right. You're where the rubber meets the road when you're writing, so it's hard. So these should be background apps in the back, like the benchmarks, the archetypal events that could be happening. And as you move to one, you might realize that, well, the poison apple, I think that's the way I'm going to go with this. So how am I going to do it? How's this going to happen? How's this going to work? How am I going to decorate it? Is it going to be something? You'd be amazed at how much of your imagination takes these ideas and runs with them and makes them their own when you're synthesizing a scene or a character moment. And a lot of stories do pull a little bit from the hero's journey too, and a little bit from the heroine's labyrinth. Aliens is great. She fights two villains. She has to unmask Ash in the first movie and then beat him. She has to unmask Carter Burke in the second one and defeat him. And then she has to kill the alien. And then in the second movie, kill the queen alien. That's the distant dragon. That's a hero's journey villain. The alien, it's foreign. It's away from the native culture. It's dangerous. If it got to Earth, it would annihilate Earth with its biological pattern. So she does a little double duty with the hero's journey and the heroine's labyrinth. Hmm. I think it's understanding the meaning behind the archetypes that helps. It helps me anyway, because it helps me distinguish what the hero or the heroine is dealing with and which archetype fits that the best. So the nature of whatever your story is, it's going to go its own kind of directions, and it's going to kind of accidentally lead into these archetypes. I think these are natural archetypal events that characters face all the time. It gives you a way to flesh them out if you know what that archetypal event is. So that's my theory anyway. It worked for me a lot when I wrote my book. I would really focus on the chapter, and then sometimes later I'm like, oh, I didn't even notice this is that archetype, and then I could go back and fix it to match the archetype more closely, and almost always that scene improved. It's amazing.
So okay. Let's just do one more, and then we'll end on one more note. Going back to the poisoned apple, then, if the poisoned apple is essentially a structural element, so what makes the poisoned apple essentially a structural element and not merely a conflict beat that could or could not appear across a number of stories?
Well, like anything, it doesn't have to appear. It doesn't have to appear. if the archetypally speaking, if the Minotaur has failed to convince or coerce the heroine into captivity, the poisoned apple is the logical step an ego, narcissist, animal, savage would try. An unequal attack, an attack of deception, in an effort to reconvince the heroine. So archetypally speaking, the way stories and villains have handled it is through this archetypal pattern, which I'm just saying is the poisoned apple. Like this set of events, this set of, like I said, it's internal. It's delivered by the masked Minotaur. It's an attack of deception and premeditated. It alters the state of the heroine or disorients, knocks her out, unconscious. So all of these things are common. You, as a storyteller, can dress that up however you want. Like I said, a face hugger meets a lot of the same definition as a red apple. Doesn't sound like it, but when you break it down archetypally, they share a lot of things. So a syringe, like we were saying with Princess Leia or Sarah Connor, like that's a poisoned apple. You can knock her out. What was the, like, there's so many. Maleficent drinks that orange poison that the guy puts in there to knock her out when she falls asleep and he cuts off her wings. But yeah, it could take on a whole bunch of different forms. It doesn't have to be. You can have the Minotaur come in and just take her, throw her over her shoulder and leave if he wants. Some stories, especially literature, don't feature a distinct masked Minotaur. It's all the heroine versus her native culture. So it might be different. It's really determined by you, the writer, and also your characters and the nature of the world that they're in. So I think that the way the story progresses determines whether or not that's going to be there. I'm just suggesting, as a writer to writer, consider a poisoned apple that follows those. If you're at that stage of the story and the Minotaur's frustrated or the villain's frustrated, maybe the poisoned apple is the archetypal theme you can put into your story, and it might work really, really good because it hits those beats, and people around the world will read it and understand what's going on, and they'll respond to it.
It makes me wonder. So this would be a deeper reason why in Empire Strikes Back, when Darth Vader wants information out of Han Solo, it's physical torture.
Yeah.
When he wants information out of Princess Leia, it's an injection.
Well, he's trying to extract something from Princess Leia. That's the difference. Remember, I said
extraction. Yeah.
Extraction. Remember, he said they never even asked me any questions.
You're right.
So he's not after the sacred fire of Han Solo. He's literally just torture porning him. He's just hurting him to get Luke to come out. But with Leia, he's injecting her because he's trying to extract the location of the rebel base. That's her sacred fire. The rebellion is her cause. That's what she cares about. That's what Han Solo ends up he ends up becoming her heroic partner. So that extraction is the other thing. The Minotaur wants something from the heroine in that possessorship. He wants something. It could be her beauty, it could be her hand in marriage, it could be the location of a rebel base, it could be the wings of Maleficent, like we just said. The masked Minotaur wants something from the heroine, and the poisoned apple is one way to get access to it again. Mother Gothel makes her give her that captivity bargain early on when she's like, the Mother Knows Best song. I don't know if you've seen Tangled. It's a great song.
I have not seen Tangled. No,
it's hysterical. But that's the captivity bargain because she wants access to Rapunzel's magic hair, which restores youth, in perpetuity. That's the sacred fire for Rapunzel.
Okay, we'll end on this question over here, but it's very similar to one I have. It's about terminology. Okay. Because I was using, and I said my notes that I sketched out about the theory of different kinds of story structures are very preliminary. But I had been using the term masculine and feminine, but I had definitely been contrasting that with male or female, because the male embodied or the female embodied could go on either one. So, like, for instance, James is saying here, the Hunchback of Notre Dame seems to be the heroine's labyrinth. Mulan as a soldier might be the hero's journey. Like, to me, even though but do I need to adjust? You were recommending then warrior instead of masculine, because
warrior-oriented journey. Yes.
And what would you call this? Because you do have the word
with that for
feminine.
I've wrestled with it because I would love to have a neat word like warrior.
Yeah.
I thought of like the homesteader, whoever stays behind. I don't really know if there's a perfect word. I really do like the heroine and I'm just naming it after the heroine because her stories showed me this. Like studying heroines is where I found this. So I'm naming it after the heroine. However, it's really a member of the native culture. You can almost say the non-warrior's journey, the non-warrior oriented journey. He or she who stays behind is going to run into a certain type of problem that's very different from the warrior who leaves to go protect it. And heroines are I think, a great stand-in for who stays behind in a lot of stories, and it shapes the nature of their conflicts.
All right. Well, I think we need to call this right here. I'm going to invite you back. You'll be want to come back for analysis with Brianna and come on after they watch this.
Yeah, I would love to. I love talk. That's why I love listening to you guys talk, because I was like, man, they talk about the exact stuff that I think about all the time. You guys had great discussions. You got deep on stuff. You debated. So yeah, you guys are great for that. I would love to.
Okay. I'm going to send it over to her then. I'm going to probably watch this again and break it down. I took notes, but I'm probably going to watch it again, and then we'll be ready to actually analyze it now that we know what it is.
Sure. Yeah, it's hard. it's hard when I struggled with it too. I was like, how much should I say? Because I was really afraid of just droning on and on and on, because I was like, man, if no one's heard of this before, it's gonna be hard to ask questions.
But we got to know what it is first. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we got comments coming in. Thank you. I mean, I saw in the comments, people just loved it and hope you find a publisher soon.
Oh, all right. That's great. I really appreciate it. I love anyone who likes this stuff. Then we're, kindred spirits, man, because we love watching movies and we love watching these archetypes play out. We have YouTube channels based on them because we never forget these stories, man. Like, that's why people want to be movie directors or writers or screenplay writers. We want to learn the secrets to make this magic. That's the motivating force.
All right. I'm going to close this out. Thank you so much for being here, Doug. And thank you everybody for the channel members for being here in the Q&A. I'll see everybody tomorrow morning for the morning grind.
Awesome.